Welcome to the Patriot Podcast, the official podcast for the dog company Charlie's Chewies LLC. My name is Michael, and I am excited to be able to share with you the genesis of Charlie's Chewies, why it started, why we're even having this conversation today. And I'm excited. I'm excited to bring this to you in the official capacity. I'm going to be sharing this. You can find this on Substack. You can, if you haven't already, go ahead and download the app. You can find our company and our newsletter. And also, I'm sharing this on YouTube. So the mission for today that I have set up is to share with you the following. Number one, the heart of the struggle. Number two, the difficulties that I had coming back with PTSD, pretty severe PTSD from the military, including some childhood trauma, and how it related into having problems building connections with myself and others. I want to talk a little bit about the evolution of myself, how after having an awakening during a period of sobriety in which I found my higher power, I was able to connect with myself, and then invariably I was able to have a much more deep connection with my service dog and a much better connection in a healthy way with other people. That is kind of the precipice. You kind of need to have that basis of understanding of how I got to that point before I talk about how cooking has helped me connect to myself and my service dog and how that relates into the purpose of having a company. All right. So first off, I want to say thank you and shout out to all of you guys on Facebook. I posted a little blip about my company, about starting something, and I couldn't offer anything up front. You know, a friend of mine said, don't offer something to somebody that you don't have yet, which is a very smart thing. I don't have the ability to just offer, like, have franchisees sign up right now. But I posted an intrigue post on Facebook and just said, hey, look, I'm starting this company. Here's a little bit about myself. I'm a veteran of, the United States military. And I have this service dog, and service dog Charlie had a bad reaction to a treat. And during that process, I had this realization that I needed to take better care of my service dog because he was taking care of me. So, so why don't we start with the genesis of all of these issues? In the Bible, it says in the beginning, so why don't we start with that? In the beginning, there was a man that struggled mightily in this world. My legal name is Adam. That's what I was born with. And that character, Adam, really struggled mightily with connecting with others. I grew up in a household with two alcoholics who had major problems in their life. And so I developed this a very unstable sense of who I was. And that kind of led that trajectory into the path of joining the military because I didn't know what else I wanted to do. So when I was 18, my dad said, son, we don't have the money for you. I have this little hair here. I don't know if you're watching the video on this podcast, you're seeing me mess with my hair. It's because I've got this little cowlick that just keeps popping around. Stay there. Anyway, so there I was, 18 years old. I had no idea what I wanted to do with my life other than just the fact that I knew I wanted to be in a helping profession somehow. I originally wanted to. So first of all, I grew up in San Antonio, Texas for about 13 years in one of the poorest neighborhoods in San Antonio called Kirby. And then my dad got a job up in Northeast Pennsylvania in the Wilkes-Barre-Scranton area. In fact, he got a job at a place called Integrated Power in Nanacoke, Pennsylvania. And we were blessed. We moved up there, and it really changed the trajectory of my life for sure. We started going to a pretty good school. Um, it gave me the inspiration to want to pursue to go to college. So I'm grateful for that. Um, and you know, but I didn't know how I was going to get there financially. And so a buddy of mine, who his name was Justin at the time, he said to me, he said, dude, you should join the National Guard. Like, it's basically Boy Scouts for adults. You know, we're going to be doing paintball contests. And I was like, oh my gosh. Well, not only did I want to be a part of something bigger, um, I also love the idea of like having fun with my friend and going and doing paintball, but I had unrealistic expectations. I had no idea what I was getting into. Long story short, getting into the military is not like Boy Scouts at all, unless you it's not. It's just not. But I signed up to become a field artillery specialist and was sent to Fort Sill, Oklahoma. And our drill sergeants at the time said, look, you know, you guys are about to get deployed. And he was right. You know, within, I think it was about 6 months after graduating basic training, you're reassigned back to your unit, which for me was Nanticoke, Pennsylvania, with the 109th Field Artillery. And we got orders. I mean, I got it on my birthday, December 19th. I got my orders for going overseas. So we got trained at a place called Fort Dix, New Jersey. And I say trained loosely because we just basically sat in an office space watching My Little General videos. So it was a little bit of a joke. Anyway, we went overseas. We served for over a year in Baghdad, originally at a place called Camp Muleskinner. And I think they changed the name to Camp Cuervo, which was, I guess, the name of a soldier who died in a pool swimming or something like that. I'm not sure. I think that's the story that I heard. Anywho, we got kicked out of that base. And we got sent up north to a place called Camp Ashraf, where we were guarding. And I say guarding, they were more guarding us than we were guarding them. We were sent to a tent city, living in tents in the middle of the desert, guarding an Iranian refugee camp. And these Iranian refugees had fought with Saddam Hussein against the Ayatollah Khomeini. I probably butchered that, in the Iraq-Iran war. So whenever we declared war on Iraq, George Bush and his cronies decided to label the Iranian refugees as terrorists. And so we had, our duty was to guard the terrorists, which they weren't really terrorists. They were more Iranian rebels. You know, they just didn't want to follow the dictatorship, the religious dictatorship in Iran. And we got blown up all the time on our trade routes, experienced IEDs. You know, we were shot at plenty of times, had to shoot at others plenty of times. So I came back with a pretty significant number of issues that went unresolved for a long time. I went to my local doctor. They didn't know what it was. They just said, you know, you're too young to have heart problems. They hooked me up, did a stress test, and they're like, your heart rate's way too high. I was experiencing other symptoms, but long story short, I just had a real problem connecting to myself. I couldn't settle my nerves. You know, something that would stress me out would really send me off into a spiral. And it took years. It took years. It took, so from 2005 to 2013, it took 8 years for me to finally get the correct diagnoses from the VA, including PTSD, depression, and anxiety symptoms, and a whole bunch of other things. Which, you know, I don't know if that was a good or bad thing to be diagnosed, because I got a lump sum from the VA for the disability. And one of my signs and symptoms in the past was to just try to cover my feelings with spending, with whatever. whatever other things that, numbing myself. And invariably, the stresses of life, I had 5 kids already at that time, between 2005 and 2013. I just got married and started having kids right away, had 5 kids in 6 years. And wouldn't you know it, um, going to school full time, working 2 jobs, burning the candle at both ends, I picked up alcohol. And that demon, even though I had promised to myself that I didn't want to do that, I didn't want to be like my parents and be an alcoholic. Um, it bit me, and that snake bit me hard. And I started binging on a regular basis. I would drink 2 cases, and I say go to sleep loosely, but I would go to sleep at 3, 4 o'clock in the morning, wake up at 8 o'clock in the morning, and go to work. I was a licensed professional counselor at that time. I had gotten my master's degree in counseling from a place called AGTS out in Springfield, Missouri, and started pursuing a doctorate at a place called Regent University in Virginia Beach, Virginia. And I had the delusion, or the dream, if you want to call it that, of becoming a professor. I thought that that was the pinnacle of the profession, was to be a professor. Um, but we got hit with the truth serum halfway through the program. They basically said that the old way of becoming a professor is not a good career anymore. And when I got hit with that, it burst my bubble. I lost all steam in that process, because not only was I drinking, I wasn't living a honest life. I wasn't. I just wasn't living an honest life. I was a very dishonest person to myself, because I couldn't trust myself. So I was breaking promises to myself all the time. And that former person, and I say former person, Adam, he really struggled greatly with integrity. He really struggled greatly with honesty. He struggled greatly with nurturing and loving himself. And so I had a spiritual encounter, and I said, look, I'm having trouble, God, connecting with myself, with others, and I need help. I need help quitting this addiction. And so I went through a intense detoxification process over the course of about 3 years. And during that detoxification process, and I'm not just talking about substances, I'm also talking about toxic relationships, including the codependent relationship I had with my ex-wife. And it, you know, I, I was struggling so greatly. I said, I needed help. I needed a lot of help. And I reached out to the VA. I tried to get a service dog. But I was having to face raising that money on my own, which was not something that I was interested in doing. I really didn't want to have to raise $50,000 on my own. I couldn't fathom it. So it took me from 2013 to 2019 to find a more natural solution to my PTSD symptoms. I was tired of the VA medications that they were shoving down my gullet. Some of them sent me off into psychotic episodes, and made things worse, significantly worse. So I wanted to seek more natural solutions. And at that point, I was still married, and I said I needed something. And I came across this movie. I think it was called Prison Dogs. Yeah, I think it was called Prison Dogs. And it was documenting the transformation of how inmates were being trained themselves how to train service dogs. And I said, that's what I want. Well, I submitted my application. I shared with them my deepest problems, and they rejected my application. And thank God they did, because, you know, what do they say? God's rejection is God's protection. I was deeply hurt by that when I got rejected from that, because I had been suffering for 14 years at that point. with pretty significant symptoms, and nothing seemed to help. So my thought was, I think a service dog is going to help, because it's going to force me into having to connect with an animal who's going to love me unconditionally, but also is going to interrupt my PTSD spells, my anxieties and my depressions. And I thought that might be a great way to solve this problem that I was having. I was having problems sleeping. I was having problems connecting with others. So long story short, a friend of the family, um, she reached out to us and said, "Hey, look, I understand that you're looking for a service dog." She was a member of the DAR, which is the Daughters of the American Revolution. In I think her chapter was out in Western Pennsylvania, and she had run into a lady named Jennifer Green, who was not working for, she had started her own service dog nonprofit out in Philadelphia, Pennsylvania. Her son, who was a Marine, had come back with pretty significant PTSD. She was a service dog trainer, or no, I'm sorry, she was a dog trainer. And at the time, the best way that she knew how to nurture and help her son was to raise a service dog herself, train it herself, and then match it with her son. And that was how Alpha Bravo Canine got started. And they were only about 2 years old, 2 years in existence at the time. And so I sent that lady my message, with my application. I just say, "Hey, look, here's my story. I'm really struggling with PTSD symptoms, et cetera, et cetera." Now, I didn't tell her about my addictions. I don't, maybe I should have at the time, but I just told her that I was having a lot of problems, and I was, I thought that I was a good candidate for having a service dog. So, um, I went through that process of going through the application process. And during that time, she said to me, of course, my name at the time was Adam. She said, "Adam, you're going to have to be patient and wait, because it takes time for us to raise these service dogs. And I can't guarantee you, it could take up to 2 years for you to get a service dog." But something inside of me knew that it was like intuition and faith, maybe combined. I wasn't really living a spiritual life. I wasn't following God, but I did believe in God. I just prayed that I thought that I needed this. And that's when I had a major episode. I was taking a blood pressure medication to lower my heart rate. But what the psychiatrist didn't know was that I already have a very low heart rate. So when I was taking that medication, it dropped my heart rate so low that I went into a an episode of, I guess the best way to call it is a psychotic episode, because I didn't know how else to explain it, but I was so easily triggered by everything that was going on. And I went through this kind of fantasy land where I thought that if maybe I took my family on a vacation and spent our last $10,000 that I had left in my savings account on a vacation to Disney World, that it would save my family. Because we were struggling, we were really struggling at that point. It was really the end of my time with my ex-wife. And I thought, one of my delusions at the time was, well, this will fix everything. And I ended up getting triggered at the airport on the way down to Florida, Orlando, Florida, to go to Disney World. And thank God that happened, because when I went into the Orlando VA down there, they were amazing, first of all. Second of all, um, my psychiatrist in um, Pennsylvania was refusing to sign off on my service dog paperwork. He just said he didn't understand it. Basically, he didn't understand why I needed it. And it didn't matter how bad my symptoms got. He didn't seem to make any connection to the fact that I really wanted to try a more natural solution to my mental health symptoms as opposed to just taking a bunch of medications, which were actually making things worse. Well, um, thank God, because what ended up happening is when I was down at the Orlando VA, I told them my problems. I told them that I was struggling with a lot of things in life and I was struggling with these symptoms. And I really was hoping to get a service dog, but that my psychiatrist was not approving of it. He wouldn't sign off on it. And when I had talked to Jennifer Green, who's the founder and CEO of Alpha Bravo, she said, I'm sorry, but we can't accept you as an applicant until your psychiatrist signs off on this paperwork, approving your application. And so I was stuck between a rock and a hard place. Well, that episode of being triggered at the airport actually was the final straw that sent me into a place where I was desperately broken. I couldn't hide my symptoms anymore, that I had been hiding or trying to hide from my family for 14 years. I just tried to hide it from everybody else and just deal with it myself. I don't know if anybody else can relate to that. Try to bootstrap your way through life and hide all the problems underneath. Well, that shadow just grew so large I couldn't hide it anymore when I was at the airport. Um, and Yeah, it was just this incredible experience. So here I am in Orlando, Florida, of all places. Um, and I just say to the psychologist, I said, look, the problem I'm having is I'm wanting to do this in a more natural way. I want to heal from these issues, but my psychiatrist in Pennsylvania doesn't think that I'm a good candidate and doesn't understand service dogs, doesn't understand what I'm going for. He said to me, the VA doesn't approve service dogs. That's what he told me. Well, the lady sitting across from me, the psychologist, said, no, you know what? Actually, I got an email about that about however many months, 6 months ago, that delineated exactly how psychiatrists can approve service dogs for veterans. Thank God, because that lady gave me the information I needed to take back to my psychiatrist when I got back to Pennsylvania from the vacation. And we went in, uh, my ex-wife and I went in together. We confronted the psychiatrist together and say, hey, look, enough is enough. You need to sign off on this because you're derelicting your duty. Basically, you need to check your email because your email gives you all of the information needed to know about how to approve a service dog and why. So thank God, because he finally signed off on that. And um, within, oh gosh, what was it, 6 months from the time that I had started talking to Jennifer, I was finally paired with service dog Charlie, uh, in, I believe it was November of 2019. Yeah, November of 2019. And that was an incredibly difficult experience. I can share that in this episode today. I'll share a little bit of it, but perhaps we'll save some of that for future to talk about service dogs and that whole process, because just because you are an applicant and an approved applicant doesn't mean that you're going to make it through through the actual pairing process. Because what happens is when you get your application is approved, then they start trying to find the right dog that fits you. And that could take years. So when I got approved, I was in this waiting process and we got a phone call from Jennifer out of the blue that I kind of expected, but I was really hoping for that would happen. And she said, I think I have a service dog for you. And wow, what an experience. So we go out there and I'm there for like 2.5 weeks. um, doing this training process, and it was absolutely terrifying because, again, you got to understand my social anxieties were so high. Being in a public place was overwhelming for me, to that degree that I didn't want to go anywhere. I didn't want to go out of my house. Um, well, at the end of the 2 weeks, we had to test together. We had to try to pass the service dog test, which included public access. So to do a public access test, you have to go out in public with your brand new service dog that he was only 16 months old at the time. And we only knew each other for 2 weeks. We were training intensively with each other for 2 weeks, but you can fail that test. And if you fail and the dog fails, then he gets failed and he doesn't make it through. So I had all this pressure built up. And wouldn't you know it, Jennifer Green, in her infinite wisdom, the way that she prepared me to pass that public access test, maybe it was October, whenever it was, I think it was Veterans Day. Was it Veterans Day? Oh my gosh, I'll have to figure it out exactly when it was. Um, yeah, I think it was Veterans Day. I think it was Veterans Day. I think it's either in October or November, whenever that is. Yeah, I think it's October. And we go to the Veterans Day parade in downtown New York City. Listen, I'm not kidding you, folks. What I'm going to do is when I edit this podcast, if you want to see the video, I'm going to populate that into the video that you can watch either on Substack or YouTube. And you can see the footage of me, whether they're pictures or videos, of me in downtown New York City on Broadway, like on the main strip, with hundreds of thousands of people, being surrounded by all these people. I got to tell you, I was so overwhelmed. It was like, you want to talk about in vivo exposure? Let's talk about it. There is no other way that I was going to be able to pass my public access test other than to be just tossed into the deep end. So what she did is she made me be in the front of the freaking parade, like the very front. Service dog Charlie and me leading the Veterans Day parade in 2019 in downtown New York City. I can't make this up. So, oh, so I, you know, I went in like it just clicked. Something just clicked. And I started force feeding treats down Charlie's gullet, like I had this huge pouch full of treats and I was just shoving them down his throat. Well, wouldn't you know, when you shove treats down a dog's gut nervously like that with so much nervous energy, he has to poop. And he couldn't hold it anymore. And he had to poop, and he pooped right in the middle of the sidewalk. He just pooped right there. Boom. And so I had to get over myself, and that was the introduction of how I basically got over myself at that point. Learning that, I'm gonna have to face my fears somehow. And Jen just she hit me with the hardest hammer that I could have ever been hit with, which was shoving me out into the unknown, right in front of everybody, right in front of God and everybody, leading the Veterans Day parade in downtown New York City in 2019. I can't make it up. So we passed our test, and that was the beginning of our relationship. And as that relationship developed, I really struggled. I have to be honest with you. When we got paired, he came back home. I wasn't sure how to integrate him into the household. We had another dog already at the time, but she wasn't a service dog. And I had trouble connecting with him. I didn't know how to get past this barrier of these mental hurdles that I would wake up with them every day, and a lot of negative self-talk, just struggling a lot with it. Um, and you know, the addictions continued. Even though I had a service dog, I was still struggling with addictions pretty significantly. Um, I was in a toxic relationship, and that relationship finally came to an end. And during that process, um, I wanted to seek help. I wanted marriage counseling, and I wanted a whole bunch of other things to help navigate that process, because I was a counselor, like I was a professional counselor. Um, After I got paired with Charlie, I recognized that it just wasn't going to be feasible for me to work in that profession anymore, because the stories were too horrific, y'all. The thing is being a professional counselor with an empathetic heart, I got hit with all sorts of different horror stories, you know, childhood traumas, and it just made my traumas come back to the surface, to the forefront. So I was being triggered at work too much. And I just knew that that was going to be the end of my career as a licensed professional counselor. I wasn't going to be able to continue. And when I wasn't working two jobs, um, the issues in the marriage came to the forefront. When you're in the house all day, every day with the person that is across from you, that you have to face. Uh, I had to face the fact that I had married the wrong person, and um, a person who I feel like I now understand she had her own issues, and I was trying to rescue her from her family. But the thing is, um, you can't be a hero if you can't take care of yourself. And I had ignored my issues for so long that it was way too late to try to address those. So in the midst of this unstable relationship on the rocks, I came up with this idea. I was taking Charlie. I was with some folks who took me to an ice cream store, and they had a pup cup for dogs. And I'll put the pictures up there. And Charlie had this treat, and he loved it. He gobbled it down. But man, I'll tell you what, he developed a really severe rash, and that rash cost about a $900 vet bill. It was incredible, incredible. And it sent me into a tailspin, sent me into an episode. And I realized at that point, if I was going to make it with Charlie, I was going to have to take a lot better care of him. So I got in the kitchen, and I just decided, you know what? Why don't I make his own treat? Why don't I make one for him? And it started out with quite a lot. I mean, I started that recipe with, oh, probably 30 ingredients, maybe. If I have the picture, I'll put it up. Um, I was well intentioned. I wanted to create the most natural treat possible without a bunch of preservatives. I wanted to create something that was going to be healthy for him, something that was going to help firm up his stool. So I started doing research. I started going online and watching YouTube videos, veterinarians, and dog anatomy, and I just dove into it head first. And I got in the kitchen, and wouldn't you know it, getting in the kitchen was one of the most therapeutic experiences of my life. And I will say that I found my soul in the kitchen, because it brought me to a place of in connecting. I loved listening to music and dancing and singing, but I loved being in the kitchen. It brought out the best in me. And I found that Charlie really loved that anticipation building process, where he was placed on his mat in the kitchen in the corner, watching me bake the treat, and then him being able to partake in that after the baking process. He loved it, and I loved it too. Like, I loved that bonding process, and I think that was the that's what changed the dynamic between Charlie and I. Because I was really struggling with him and he was really struggling with me. We weren't really pairing very well. Because the pairing process can take years, you know, it can take 2 to 3 years for you to adequately pair with your service dog. And I was really struggling. I was really struggling connecting with him. But by getting in the kitchen and getting my hands on the treat and learning how to slow my thought processes down into a step-by-step baking process, that helped get my gears turning on how I was going to overcome these issues. So, so yeah, that is the genesis of Charlie's Chewies. I did end up going through a pretty significant divorce. I was misled in that divorce process on the custody, and um it led to even more decompensating, which I almost completely lost all interest in doing this dog company, because I had started this dog company from scratch in my own kitchen and I had all the materials, had everything there, and I was ready to like go full score with it. I wanted to create a dog bakery in the local place. I was living in Trafford, Pennsylvania at the time. So I had created a YouTube channel and I was posting videos and I was churning and I was ready to get rolling with that dog company in 2020. And that divorce hit me straight in the forehead, because I lost everything. I lost my house, I lost my truck, lost my kids, lost my wife, lost everything. Um, and eventually ended up out in Harrisburg, Pennsylvania, homeless, living out of my car, uh, and got hit head on by a drunk driver. And during that process, um, it it basically stalled any momentum that I had with this dog company, Charlie's Chewies. Um, I was waiting on the trademark, but even in the midst of waiting on that trademark, I had lost all motive, I lost all desire to continue with growing the company. You know, it's hard, man. When you go through a divorce, it can really, especially if you go through a bitter divorce where the two people don't get along at all and there's no connection, no communication, and it's just a complete split. That was really hard for me. You know, I loved being a father. I loved being with my kids, but you know, that connection was completely severed, broken off, divorced, and then I was left scrambling on what I wanted to do. So I decided I wanted to be a firefighter. I'm out in Harrisburg, Pennsylvania, and I submitted my application. I was going to be a firefighter. Um, and once you know it, got intervened, because the very next day after I had submitted my application, that's when I got hit head on by the drunk driver, which changed the trajectory of everything that was going on. And I ended up in San Antonio, back in San Antonio for about a year, living with my uncle who had his own addictions. So I realized that wasn't going to be healthy for me. And my higher power intervened, and I ended up in Southern Illinois, of all places, about 45 minutes west of where my mother went to college at Southern Illinois University, the Salukis in Carbondale, Illinois. So I ended up in Harrisburg, Illinois, of all places, near the Garden of the Gods. And I was able to find a place that was affordable. Um, and I got an email, because again, you got to understand, I was just not feeling motivated to pursue my dreams. But I joined a coaching program and I was trying to force myself into pursuing it, and I just wasn't clicking. Like, and I now that I know that that's actually grief and trauma combined. When you go through something that traumatic, you're traumatically separated away from your kids, your family, everything that you ever knew. there's a traumatic separation, and that was the blockage. So um I got an email. I got an email from the VA, and in this email they talked about this program called Warrior Rising. And I was like, ooh, an entrepreneurship program? That sounds good. So I joined this entrepreneurship program called Warrior Rising, and it fueled my passion again. It gave me hope because it forced me into having to confront some of the fears that were facing me. And those fears and insecurities that had been plaguing me my whole life were what was blocking me from taking steps towards making this dream a reality, making this company a reality. And that wasn't the end of it, but during that process, I was still suicidally depressed. And I had an encounter that I can only say is a divine encounter with the higher power, and I call it God. And that was when I had a spiritual awakening. And during that spiritual awakening, I realized that I do have value to add to this world. I do have something to give to people. I have something to offer. And I believe in the treat. I believe in the purpose. And so it helped me connect with when I was doing that business plan development through the Veteran Entrepreneur Program. It helped me connect with the why. And the why was the struggles transitioning from military service. I was struggling transitioning in my life. Each one of my pain points, if you go back through and when you think about this podcast, each one of those pain points that I have, that was what helped me connect my pain with my passion. I love cooking. Why do I love cooking? Well, I had a very tumultuous relationship with my mother, but one of my best memories ever was being in the kitchen and cooking with my mother. And that's how I found my soul. I found my soul in the kitchen cooking. It reminded me of the good memories of my mother. So I was like, oh my gosh, that actually makes sense. And once you make that connection with your why, that was what inspired me to continue taking steps towards creating the dog company. So I had this vision pop up in my head of creating, bear with me, because now we're going to be talking about the mission and the vision and what I want from this company. I wanted to create a franchised dog company where I could replicate that same process of putting your heart and soul into a handmade novelty, right? Something that you can get your hands on. Because one of the things I'm passionate about are veterans that are transitioning, whether you're transitioning into retirement or you're transitioning out of the military, whatever form, wherever you're at in life, I want to help people where they are at a point of transition because I've been through that. So I wanted to create a company that I could replicate, helping somebody learn the value of creating their own business and doing it from scratch. Now, because I'm a business owner and I'm doing it first. When you think of a leader, you think of somebody who leads from the front. You think of General Patton, you think of Caesar, you think of Alexander. All of these generals, these great men, they all led from the front. And so as I was going through this veteran entrepreneurship program, there was these terrific leaders that were modeling how to become a leader. One of them, I'm just going to shout him out right now, Benjamin Bunn. God bless him. Shout out to you, brother. And the Warrior Rising. Now they have their own podcast. You can follow that along if you want. But it set in motion for me an idea of becoming a new man, and that awakening process is, the shirt says it right here, made new. And in that I'll call it a spiritual awakening process. I believe that my higher power gave me a new name, which is Michael, and that's what you'll see on Facebook, and that's what I want to go by. I don't like that spelling, Michael, that you see down at the bottom of the screen. I like the spelling Michael. But anywho, um, the name Michael means for who is like God. And I was at a point in my life when I was suicidally depressed, curled up with service dog Charlie in my bed. And I said to God at one point, because I was so depressed, I had no motivation, no feeling, no hope. And I said, God, if you're out there, I'm ready to go home. I'm ready for you to take me home. And that next day was when I had that spiritual awakening. So my whole life is changing for the positive. And that was October of last year when I had that intense encounter with my higher power. And it reinvigorated my passion, and it reinvigorated my desire to want to take steps to culminating this desire that I had started back in 2020. So 4 years later, I learned the lessons. I learned the hard lessons in life, that anybody who wants to be different, anybody who wants to be an entrepreneur, there's sacrifice involved. And I had to sacrifice my old self. So Adam was my old name, and I had to sacrifice him. Adam had a lot of problems. Adam had an old way of thinking and believing and acting in the world that wasn't sustainable. And so I learned that taking care of myself and nurturing myself is the best way that I can present myself and my company to the world in an authentic and genuine way that other people can relate to and that they can benefit from. Because if I'm not taking care of myself, and if I'm not prioritizing myself first, and I don't find and achieve balance in my life, balance between business and pleasure, play, and you know, details, business details, then I won't be that. But I don't believe that. I believe that this company has a future. And so I want to share with you a little bit about my dreams and hopes for the future. I don't want to give away too many secrets. I think some of those are meant to be kept in, kept in my pocket until I'm ready to share them. But um, I wanted to create a company that gives people the freedom and flexibility to join as a franchisee and create their own novelty out of their kitchen or their own version. And what I mean by that is, yes, we're starting with a treat, but I don't just want to create a dog company that only offers treats. The backbone, pun intended, of this treat, of this company is the treat. It's the mission is to serve those that have served. And that's not just veterans, but that's also the dogs, because our dogs are our best companions in this life. They love us unconditionally. There's no changing of mind. When they bond with you, they're bonded for life. And they have a very short lifespan. And losing a dog is like losing a family member. Anybody who's had a dog and has had to put a dog down, it's heartbreaking, and it's just, they're like angels on earth. I don't know how else to explain it, but Charlie has been with me through my most severe of suicidally depressed episodes. He was with me during that car accident where I herniated a disc in my neck and went through 2 years of intensive rehabilitation to restore me physically to be able to even stand in the kitchen. Um, and so I've been surrounded by earthly angels this entire time. People who've pushed me past my limits. The veteran entrepreneurship program pushed me past my limits. Tracy, the lady from Rose Block Antiques that you can see on the video, I'll tag that video, where I went in and gave her sample dog treats. She was the one that pushed me when I joined kickboxing about a year ago now. She pushed me past my limits. At the time, I was experiencing so much pain in my body from the car accident, but she pushed me past that. She pushed me past my pain threshold, pushed me past my limits, and it forced me to get into better shape. And now I'm walking miles every day I'm taking much better care of myself, and I'm also taking much better care of my service dog. He loves being outside. So we are connecting now. And that's what this company, that's what I want. That's what I want to create is I want to create, because here's the problem. What mass manufacturing, this is where I'll veer off and to explain how this company is different. I didn't want to create a company that is just going to scale to mass manufacturing to just throw on a shelf. Like, you're not going to see Charlie's Chewies on a Walmart shelf ever. You will never find Charlie's Chewies on a Walmart shelf. And it's nothing against Walmart. God bless them, and thanks to Walmart that we have a lot of goods that we can get at lower prices, but that's not what we want for our company. And I'm going to explain to you why. The soul of this company is started in the kitchen, because that's where I found my connection with my service dog. The purpose of all of this is to make healthy connections. That is the value that's undergirding the entirety of this franchise. Healthy connections with your environment, with people, with your dog, with yourself. I don't have the desire to rush this to the shelves. I've been very slow and deliberate with this process. It's taken me 4 years to get here. So there's no point in trying to rush this to scale. And when I say that, I mean, there's no point in trying to rush into getting this on the shelf just to earn $1. You know why? Because I've learned that money doesn't really matter. The only thing that really matters is your values and your integrity and your purpose and your legacy. That's the only thing that matters. And so I wanted to create a company that is founded on integrity, honesty, and healthy connection. So that's why I've created this company from scratch, using my own trials, tribulations, my experiences, my frustrations, my pains, my passions. And I created a YouTube channel to share with you and give people insight into how I'm creating a dog company from scratch. Being authentic, being vulnerable, sharing with you the truth about my journey, so that when I do scale this company, the goal is to be the best doggone dog company on the planet. That's what I want. I want this dog company to be the most well-known dog company in the entire planet. That's what I want, but not overnight. And I want to do this by bringing other people along that share their love for cooking, share the love of dogs and animals, share their love and connection with other people, have integrity, have values, have purpose. And so I thought, what better way to serve one of my pain points, which is suicidal depression, by the way, because I was very close to ending it. What better way to create a gap filler? Because one of the problems that we have with veterans in this world right now is veterans homelessness. One of the problems that we have in our United States is veteran suicide. One of the problems that we face are money issues, fiscal issues. A lot of veterans struggle with finances, and I'm one of them. So I wanted to create a revenue stream and teach people how, or allow people to learn, I will say that, guide them towards that learning process on how to create a company for themselves if they're at that stage of their life cycle, right? And if they're coming out of, whether they're active duty guards or reservists and they recently discharged, or they've been out for a while and they're searching for a career opportunity, I wanted to create a gap filler so that they could make something out of their own kitchen and start making connections with their local environment. And I'm going to tell you why. This is, again, this should make sense now why I'm not going to be putting this in a Walmart store and just mass producing it in some place out in Timbuktu. Because making connections with people is the most lost art form in our world. And I learned that the hard way. I learned that because I'd never really felt a connection with other people, truly, genuinely, authentically, because I never really felt one with myself for a very long time. And once I was able to connect with my higher power, then I was able to start authentically connecting with other people. And I started reaching out to other people, making connections and friendships in my local environment. And that's one of the biggest issues, especially with veterans who are, they're struggling with their career, is they're struggling with making healthy connections. So what better way than to lead somebody down the path of creating a value-added treat and bridging that gap of relational connection so that they could learn to go locally, go door to door if they want to, or use their own ingenuity on how they want to connect with people locally. Because my vision is to have regionally is to have Charlie's Chewies representatives all over the country, all over. And I want veterans. I want veteran spouses, and I want the children of veterans to be the people who are those representatives. And my first heart is to reach the veterans themselves so that we can build this thing up from the ground up together. Because one of the things that I've learned is that the veteran community is incredibly positively and incredibly supporting of each other. I post that Facebook post and had over 100 likes in one day. Had a ton of comments and a ton of intrigue all at once. And it just keeps, every single time that I've reached out, my life has gotten better every time that I've connected with another veteran. Every time. Whether it's a friend, whether it's a colleague, a peer, my life has gotten infinitely better. And so I wanted to create a community of like-minded people who are bonded over the same value, and that is their dogs. What better way? What better way to bridge that gap of connection? And that's what has helped me make friendships and relationships with people. Charlie, because people can relate to a dog. When you think of a dog, it automatically triggers your brain into positive memories, unless you've been attacked by dogs and you have fear of dogs. But, for the most part, people love dogs, man. And it's an easy way to bridge the gap to building relationships and connections with other people. It just is. So, yeah, that's the vision for Charlie's Chewies, is to have the capability for people just like I am to bake a novel treat out of their own home and use their own God-given ingenuity on how they want to market themselves locally. If somebody wants to, and again, this is why I'm setting this up. I want to set this up as a franchising opportunity so that people can invest, instead of throwing a whole bunch of money and creating a corporate structure that's top down, where I suffocate the ingenuity of the franchisee by taking, let's say, for example, if you're a McDonald's, you wanted to be part of a McDonald's franchise. It's easier. The barrier to entry is a lot easier because everybody knows McDonald's, but you have to have a lot of capital up front. I wanted to lower that barrier to market by reducing significantly a franchising fee down to an extremely low amount, so that the barrier to entry is a lot lower, but the elbow grease is needed a lot more. And what that means is I wanted to create it so that people have to basically build their own company from scratch. That it's the most value. Listen, it's the best way that I can explain how I've gotten to where I've gotten is I'm building it from scratch. Now, that doesn't mean that I'm not going to help people. What it means is, let's say, for example, Susie from Facebook finds out, and she's a veteran. She's a 55-year-old veteran who has this idea. By the way, this is actually something that came up on Facebook. She said she wanted to start her own dog restaurant. Well, I want novelty. I don't want the same freaking McDonald's template franchise in every city in the country. That's boring. Not only is that type of food terrible for you, but it's boring. Yes, it's consistent. People can go anywhere in the world and basically kind of get the similar type of menu. Well, not in the world. Let's just say here in the United States. You can go to any place in the United States in McDonald's and you can basically get anything on the menu, and it's pretty much the same everywhere you go because they have all of their distribution from the same mass producing meat farms and packaging plants all over there, right? I didn't want that. I wanted to create it so that people have to find your own, find or raise your own chickens, because my eggs are locally raised. So there's going to be a little bit of that distribution process where you're going to have to figure out how you get your ingredients. Now, of course, the majority of the ingredients are going to be easy to get off of Amazon because that's how I created my company. But deer antlers and, deer antler powder and also eggs, you can get that stuff locally, especially if you live out in the Midwest somewhere. If you live in Pennsylvania, you can get deer antlers, you can grind that up into powder. But that's the point of doing this, is that it's going to take a little bit more elbow grease for people who join this franchise, because it's not just going to be a handout. It's not just like, oh yeah, here's a McDonald's franchise. All you got to do is just invest 50 grand or 100 grand. And now you can just start your own McDonald's restaurant. No. What happens if Susie from Maine, let's just say Maine, for example, she's a 55-year-old veteran, and she wants to join the Charlie's Chewies franchise underneath the brand of Charlie's Chewies, because she shares the same values, serving others who have served, and being part of the best dog company in the world, loving her animals, right? She shares the same value. She loves dogs, but she wants to create a restaurant. Well, what's to stop somebody like that? Why would I want to limit somebody's ingenuity if they have the capital and they want to create a dog restaurant? I'd love that to be a part of Charlie's Chewies. If somebody wants to create let's say like a food truck type of distribution where they park outside of dog parks and they travel in their network within the same city, and they want to sell dog treats locally, that's what I want. So that would definitely be approved as far as what I would hope for as somebody who's going to be a franchisee, right? I want people to think outside the box, because the box is what got us into this problem in the first place. Our dog treats on the shelves are terrible for them. People love the value of knowing that this is a homemade treat made out of the kitchen and that it's actually good for their dogs. It's extremely healthy for dogs. So, yeah, I'm gonna close with this memory, and because I think this is enough for today's podcast, which I'll be doing these podcasts, by the way, every week on a Saturday, and I'll be uploading them and sharing them through Substack and YouTube. One of the best memories I've had so far of starting this dog company was a friend of mine who is also a veteran, and she got these dogs that were these misfits. They were just dropped off at her porch. a female dog and her two pups, and they had diarrhea really bad. They had really nasty health issues going on. And she had been trying everything that she could. She went to the store, she got a probiotic, she tried everything that she could to get these dogs' stool to firm up. Well, that's when she asked me, she reached out and said, hey, can I get some of your dog treats? So I cooked her up a batch, and I gave her a free batch just because it's the right thing to do. She told me she was really struggling. We met in the park. We sat, we had a conversation. She said she was really struggling. She didn't know what to do with these dogs. She didn't want to put them down, but she was really struggling with them. They were having bad health problems. So I baked her a batch of my dog treats, and I gave her to them for free. Each bag is, I'm going to be pricing them at $17.76. $17.76. I'm sure you can get the reference. Each bag cost me about $10 to make. So it's about a $7.76 profit for per bag. But I just gave it to her for free because, she's a friend. And she gave me the best report ever. She told me about a week later, we went to the Garden of the Gods in Southern Illinois, and we were sitting out on top of the rock face overlooking this, it's an amazing scene, the Garden of the Gods in Southern Illinois. And she says to me, the dogs, by the way, their health has gotten so much better. Their stool has firmed up perfectly. And I cried, because I have put my heart and soul into these treats to create the best recipe possible. I wanted to create a recipe that was healthy and was good for the dog's gut. And so, what I'll do is, I think what I'm going to do next episode is we're going to talk a little bit about the ingredients and how I got to that point. But everything that I use is either organic, locally raised, or extremely healthy for the dog. And I set it up that way from the beginning. So that's enough for today. God bless you. Thank you so much for listening. If you have gotten value from this, you can help this channel grow, and you can help this community grow by hitting the like button, sharing and subscribing. Share it with somebody that you think would value from this. It doesn't have to be only veterans that are helping build this company. You can help this company grow, even though I'm only going to be offering this as a franchise to veterans and their families. Veterans first, and then eventually their family members, whether it's a spouse or a significant other or a family, a child. I wanted to start with the veteran themselves, but listen, we're going to be selling to people who are civilians. You know what I mean? So I need help. I can't do this on my own. And if you believe me, if you believe in the message, then all I ask is that you hit the like button, you subscribe. And if you feel like somebody else might value from it, then go ahead and share it. I will see you in the next episode next Saturday. God bless.